So he said that it's going to take some time, but he'll try to do the questions as quickly as possible. Okay? For you people to revise
Yeah.
and practice. Okay? So let's start now. Knowledge and its nature. The word gnana in ordinary sense means knowledge, which may be of different kinds physical, mental, material, or spiritual. In the spiritual sense, the term is applied so vaguely that it often becomes very difficult to understand its true significance. The range it covers extends from the baser level of common understanding to the higher level of inner enlightenment. This gives rise to a lot of confusion and misunderstanding. A man who has learnt a few scriptures, another who recites every moment set phrases like Am Brahmasmi, claim to be Gnani or the enlightened and are accepted as such by the masses, irrespective of their inner state. Gnana, in the real sense, refer to the inner condition of the mind, which an Abhyasi develops during the course of his pursuit while passing through different spiritual states at different knots or granthis. You remember the same definition is given in the first chapter of Towards Infinity. So it's kind of a repetition of some of these things. Gnana is, in fact, the realizations of the conditions prevailing at each knot. Now, since the knots are innumerable, the knowledge gained is also different according to the level of approach of the Abhyasi. In other words, the kind of knowledge that the Abhyasi has, if they are at the fourth point, is different versus person who is at eighth point or 10th point. Their levels of knowledge will be different. Their way of doing things and looking at things in life will also be different. Thus, it is almost meaningless to call one a Gnani without defining the level of approach or the limit of knowledge realized by him. The real state of enlightenment comes when we get into full consciousness of the condition of enlightenment and after imbibing its effect, secure and merge it with it. It is this line that Daji has converted into AEIOU. This particular line that Babuji has written here, the real state of enlightenment comes when we get into full consciousness of the conditions of enlightenment and after imbibing its effect, secure and our merging into it. So this is the AEIOU that we call this. It is just that rather than use the state of enlightenment, Daji has used the conditions. So he's applied it or broadened the scope into every condition. When we develop the state and merge into its consciousness, we come to know all about it and thus become Gnani or enlightened up to that extent. If we try to gain the knowledge by applying our force of thought, it will only be artificial and not true and genuine. The real knowledge of a state means complete identicality with the state we have merged in. So that is the O and U. The help that knowledge at different state offers is that it infuses us with the longing for the search for the ultimate. So every time we experience certain conditions in different points, it actually gives us more energy to move towards the ultimate or towards the goal. That's the benefit of the knowledge. Now, again, this is something that they have taken from another chapter. It's also repetition. Ignorance and knowledge are the two extremities of the same thing. Up to a certain extent, it is termed as ignorance. After that, it turns into knowledge. They are like the two poles of a magnet. Thus, avidya has no existence without vidya and vidya without avidya. If one is there, the other must also be there. That means when the wheel of ignorance is torn off, avidya and vidya are both gone. Avidya comprises of the entire sphere included in both avidya and vidya. So both vidya and avidya come under the sphere of the avidya. That is the state of the thumb which is beyond both. It is in the true sense the state of realization where there is neither avidya nor vidya. So you start with avidya, then you go to vidya, and then you cross both to establish yourself in the state of the thumb. What is there then? Neither of the two. A state of perfect latency or non-awareness or complete knowledge, complete knowledgelessness, which may roughly be denoted as the same as ignorance, just as it is at the age of infancy. Ignorance to mean ignorance in fact is the highest pitch of knowledge. That comes to mean that we start from the level of ignorance and finally end in a state of higher ignorance or complete ignorance, as I call it. The sphere of knowledge, in the popular sense of the term, is only an intermediary stage. Really, so far as it is the sphere of knowledge, it is all ignorance in the true sense. Does it make sense? I think again, this is a repetition of what we read in the last chapter. I'll finish these two paragraphs, and then if there are any questions, I'll take those questions. Now, during the meditation, now satsang, something was coming. Now, we have a common saying, ignorance is bliss, right? So every one of us know about it. Ignorance is bliss. Now, please expand that. Complete ignorance, as Babuji calls it, is real bliss. So, ignorance is bliss that we each one of us know. But very few people know that complete ignorance that we reach in the end in our spiritual journey is real bliss, is the state of real bliss. And that is what Babuji is talking about. Can that which dawn after the veil of ignorance is torn off ever be expressed as knowledge? Certainly not, though one does call it so in the outer sense, taking into view the two opposites. Does it cover the sense of knowledge? No. Knowledge implies awareness of that which is beyond the self. Realization means merging or oneness with the absolute. So he is now differentiating between knowledge and realization. Knowledge means awareness of that which is beyond the self. So it's only awareness, that is knowledge. Realization is merging or oneness with the absolute. Please underline these two words, these two sentences, because that is going to be of very much use in your journey. So initially we might become more aware and become knowledgeable, but eventually we have to enter into the state of realization, which is merging. In that case, no question of knowledge can ever arise. What then, for example, if we don't know the taste of the wheat or a particular fruit, we can try to express it in knowledge. Now, that might give us a clue regarding what it is like. If we want to realize it, we have to eat the fruit, eat the thing, and merge with it. Now, once we eat that thing and merge with it, there is no question of how it tastes like. We already know how it feels, how it tastes, everything. So, realization has a quality of wholesomeness to it. Knowledge is only partial in its aspect. So, there is a wholesomeness aspect to realization, which is not there in the case of knowledge. In the knowledge, there is an awareness of it, not necessarily a wholesome experience. Wholesome experience is different, awareness is different. So I hope you can differentiate between these two. So knowledge is an intermediary stage. We develop awareness of a particular thing. But in realization, we actually secure mergence with that particular thing. So becoming aware of mango is knowledge. Eating the mango and actually merging with the mango or the mango merging with us is realization. So there are two different things. What then may that be called? Knowledgelessness or not knowingness, ignorance or whatsoever. In short, it must be something like that, though it may well nigh be impossible to express it in words. Complete ignorance, as I put it, may however be the nearest to appropriateness. One on the path of divine path, one on the divine path is supposed to be marching from darkness to light. Let darkness be avidya and light be vidya. Sahaj Marg does not have light for its goal. It is but an intermediary stage that we pass through during our march to the ultimate, which is neither light nor darkness but beyond both. Thus, we start from avidya, pass through vidya, on to that stage which is neither avidya or vidya but beyond both. What word can denote the exact sense of that which is neither light or knowledge or which is neither avidya or vidya? Is there any word for that in any vocabulary of the word? None for sure. Let it therefore be, as I say, complete ignorance, different from its crudest sense of preliminary ignorance. So I'll just stop here. Any questions you can ask? I think this is a repetition of what we read in the previous chapters in the Towards Infinity. So there is nothing new in this. And I hope you got the difference between knowledge and realization. In realization, it is not just awareness, you also have the experiential knowledge. In knowledge, you just have awareness of the thing, you need not have an experience of that particular thing. So that's another difference. So if we want to merge with a particular thing, the merger is always based on experiencing the things initially. Only after we experience the thing, we actually secure merger with it. If we do not experience the thing at all, then there's no question of any mergence with it. So hope there are quite a few points that you can actually utilize to differentiate between knowledge and realization. A knowledgeable person can actually give you awareness of certain things in certain ways. A person who has realized that particular thing can actually give you the explanation of the same thing in multiple ways in the way that you can actually grasp it. So a knowledgeable person is like they become aware of a certain thing, so they can repeat certain things in certain ways. That's all. Now you might understand, you might not understand. But a realized person, since they have the mergence with that condition, they can put it into words in any way that will make you understand and grasp it much more easily. So, in other words, since the realized person has a far more wholesome aspect of that experience, they can actually elaborate on that particular condition a lot more than a knowledgeable person can ever do. So, but this is a very, very important point. But it's also important that there are a lot of people who feel that knowledge is not necessary for the journey, and that is not correct. In fact, the fourth kosha, which is the intellectual sheath or the wisdom sheath, is the finest sheath that we have got of all the five koshas. We are not aware of the causal body or the Anandamaya kosha. But we are trained to use our intellect because of the education that we have got. So, if we can utilize the finest kosha that we have been given in this life, which is the intellectual sheath, for our spiritual journey, that will actually hasten our spiritual journey a lot. So, it adds a lot of momentum to our journey. And that's exactly what Daji is actually seeking to achieve. To aid the spiritual journey of people, he's actually brought this SNP program where you are actually made to read and undergo training, understand many different things, go to a depth of understanding, utilize your knowledge sheath to accelerate your journey. So that that can give you some base for your experiential knowledge that you are going to duly develop as and when you start working as a preceptor. So there are two levels of knowledge here. One level of knowledge is where you read a book, understand, and become aware of certain things. That's one level. Then after that, you start working, you pass the exam, you start working as a preceptor, you develop experiential knowledge of working. Now, that experiential knowledge will now become a stronger base for the knowledge or the awareness that you have gained from other sources. Then that knowledge that you have gained from the other sources will now develop a wholesome aspect to it. I hope it is clear because there are a lot of people in our mission still who have a wrong conception that knowledge is unnecessary for the journey. And that's not a correct notion. So we keep saying that from books you cannot realize, but when you realize you don't read the books, then many people still have the question, why do we need the books at all? If that is the case, why does Daji go on writing books? We need to ask ourselves this question. Anyway, looks like because of the effect of the festival, everyone seems to be very quiet today. Anybody wants to say anything?
There is a lot to ponder, brother.
So it's a question to ponder about.
Yeah, yeah.
So that sentence that from books you cannot realize. But once you realize there is no need for books, then if that is the case, why do all spiritual masters, especially in our system, go on writing books? And they do request you to buy the book and read the book and assimilate what they have written. From
My
what
view on
Balaji
that,
is saying, at least there is some meaning in the sense that there is some utility of the book. That's the reason why masters are bringing out so many books. Almost every other bandara, quite a few books are released in many different languages. Correct. So we all need to ponder about what is the role of a book or the knowledge that we gain from reading the book and going and developing a deeper understanding in the context of our overall journey in spirituality. So we need to grasp that. So each one of us will realize the importance of it as we go forward. I think that is you're saying something.
yeah, brother. The thing is that it is something like knowing that I don't know is also very important.
Correct.
And without that, when the books come, that makes us feel to uh, know that I don't know that, and also to know that. So until we this avidya and vidya, that is where I'm coming from. So only when the books come, we know that okay, we are still in that avidya zone, and then we try to move to that vidya zone by reading those books. So, but
But
again,
Vidya zone has two
experiencing that,
aspects.
yeah,
Sorry to interrupt. Vidya zone has two aspects.
correct,
The knowledge that you gain from the books and then the experiential knowledge.
experience. Yeah,
Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, that is yeah. That is what I was trying to put. That first step is towards knowing the knowledge, and then second step is firstly it is knowing that from moving from avidya to vidya and from vidya to experience with the experience, and then trying to refine that experience, and then try to reach to the realization.
Okay. Thanks for your input, brother. Anybody else wants to say anything else?
Evening, brother. Here, those who cannot read and write and having the knowledge of studying in spirituality, how they will progress?
They will progress by knowing the conditions of the heart. See, knowledge, when we say two aspects of knowledge, one is the aspect of the knowledge at the level of the mind. Second one is the aspect of the knowledge of the conditions felt at the level of the heart. So even though the mind might not be evolved to such extent as to know and become aware of certain conditions, the heart can still evolve. So there is a natural way in which the heart can grow. So if people do meditate, if the mind does not progress in terms of gaining the knowledge, the heart can still feel it. Knowing is a different thing, feeling is a different thing. Feeling is more experiential. So if you have the, what you say, expansion of the mind, you will be in a better position to put it into words. That's the mind aspect. But the heart can anyway feel because there is the organ of feeling. The heart can anyway experience. So you can be in a very sublime state at the level of the heart, but you might not be able to put it into words. That is possible. So it is just that when it comes to teaching others, it might not be possible for them to actually verbalize everything and teach them. So in a way, but it doesn't mean that you cannot transmit from that condition to the condition to the other person. That can be done anyway. So in our system, the progress of Abhyasi is not barred just because the mind is not able to express certain things. But for it to become wholesome in our experience, what Daji wants is he wants both expansion of the mind and the growth of the heart, both. So that the whole of the heart mind field expands in its capability. So if somebody is illiterate, doesn't mean to say that they cannot work in a spiritual field. They can work, but they might not be able to work in the other way who's illiterate. Definitely there will be difference in the way that they can actually work. Okay. But now the emphasis is to get more and more people who can work both at the heart and mind level. So there were a lot of preceptors in the past who were although illiterate, who could do very good work of the master, because ultimately it's the master only who is working through us. So to that extent, the work is not going to be impeded. But the expression of the master's work in terms of the conditions felt needs the help of the mind. Okay. Seripa, let's continue and finish this chapter. Means Tarka, Shruti and Anubhava. What are the means of knowledge? The Tarka, Shruti and Anubhava. Generally, philosophers have attempted to reach the innermost core of the things through reason or Tarka and not through vision. Reason in its popular sense may be faulty, may fail us, but if a thing is seen through the intuitive vision or insight without the unnecessary medium of reason, it will be visible in its original form without any error or defect. We should try to understand things when the knots begin to open by themselves. So that's why in our spiritual system, we wait for the knots to open up by itself. We don't try to force it. Guidance sought from books is not of much avail, since it is often misleading and sometimes dangerous too. Methods prescribed in books are generally confusing, touching the outer aspect only. One can never become a physician by simply reading the names of the medicine and their properties. It is impossible to come to a thorough understanding of the state of the mango merely by reading the description of it in books. The proof of the pudding lies in the tasting, is a well-known saying. There seems to be contradiction in the Vedas, apparently. The six schools of philosophy are the result. Everybody, according to his reach, says something or other. The real study is that by which we realize the unchangeable, and that is realized neither by reading nor by believing or by reasoning, but by superconscious perception. So please underline that line. The real study is that by which we realize the unchangeable, which is the reality. And that is realized neither by the reading, nor by believing, nor by reasoning, but by superconscious perception. Now, this is the intuition that we have to develop, superconscious perception. I may frankly confess that I have studied no books, for I never thought them worthwhile. I aimed at reality, which I thought to be the only thing worth having, and left the study of the books for the scholars and pandits. Whatever I say or write is on the basis of my own experience or anubhava on the path of realization, irrespective of what Shankara or Ramanuja or others might have said about their own. I no doubt do read sometimes now, but that only by way of recreation, and try to retain as much as I can for the sake of easy expression. So Babuji used to read for the sake of easy expression, not because he required that help on the path of realization. I remember one such thing which I had read in Viveka Chudamani by Shankaracharya, which means books do not help us in realization, and realization is achieved, books are worthless or useless. There is hell for the, this is also another thing that will be asked in the examination. Please underline this particular line. There is hell for the sinful, paradise for the ignorant, Brahmaloka for the innocent. But for the wise and the learned, there is artificial paradise of their own making, and for those who are weak, this mortal world. So this question can come. So if somebody is sinful, they'll go to hell. If somebody is innocent, they have go to Brahmaloka. If somebody is ignorant, they go to paradise. But wise and scholarly people go to their artificial paradise, and if somebody is weak, they will live in this world. But who may be weak? They are only those who lack self-reliance and confidence. The Shastras go into contradiction of each other, but they are of no value to us since they offer a chance to think upon and arrive at a solution. They have another merit besides, namely that they offer means and methods for spiritual advancements for men of every taste, mentality, and standard of mind. So underline these two things. What is the use of Shastras? Two things it will do. Since there are contradictions, it will actually help us to ponder about it and arrive at a solution. So that's one thing, since there are differences in the Shastras. Second thing is that it also offers means and methods of spiritual advancement for every taste, mentality, and standard of mind. If I had proceeded along the path of realization through books, I could never have come up to that level of ignorance, which is the basic property of the divine. It's only the practical life that is worth having. We should not only be knowing what realization is, but we should try to attain it as well. So, in other words, the theory, the study of the books, and the practice should go hand in hand. Then they can actually come into a feedback loop and they can actually accentuate our journey. So, the books will actually help us stabilize in our practice. The experiences that we gain in the practice help us to actually go deeper into the books. Both are necessary for our journey. So, like we say, we actually fly with both the wings, material wing and spiritual wing. As far as spiritual journey is concerned, we require two wings. The book knowledge that you gain and the experiential knowledge gain that you gain by practice. Both are necessary. Okay? Yogita, please go ahead.
Brother, as you told that knots cannot be forced to open up, like, can you explain a little elaborately, brother? Like, then how can it open up? Is by the bhog or what?
When, see, we don't use force. What we use is that we use heat or we use subtle suggestions. That's how we work. We cannot use force. That's why we say in meditation, never use force. Even when you take a sitting, no force is used. Then what is used? What is used is suggestion. Suggestion is like a forceless force. In fact, the less the force in the suggestion, more effective it is. The more the force in the suggestion, less effective it is. We've all seen in our normal day-to-day life also, when somebody is shouting at us, it is less likely that we are going to listen to them. When somebody actually tells something nice to us in very little force, we are more likely to listen to it. Don't we experience this?
Yes, brother.
Exactly the same thing that occurs in our spiritual sadhana also. The more subtle the suggestion, the more deeper it works. The more forceful the suggestion, less deeper it works. That's all it is. So when you are sitting in for meditation, your gentleness should be such that even breath should appear to be more forceful. Normally we are breathing, we are using some force to breathe. So the energy that we require for breathing is also more heavier than the energy that is required for breathing. When we stabilize in that state of meditation, then our progress is very, very smooth. When we try hard in meditation, then our progress will actually be slow. So meditation is not trying hard. So when we try to concentrate in meditation, we are actually trying to use force. And that actually reduces our speed of journey in meditation. So no need for concentration in meditation. Concentration is an output of meditation done properly. Now, how is that? When we meditate, we withdraw the energy which is kind of going out in all directions, going to the body and also going to the mind layer. We withdraw that energy. We don't pay attention to anything that is happening outside or what is happening in the body, nor what is happening at the level of the mind in the terms of thoughts and emotions. We don't pay attention to it. We acknowledge everything, but we don't pay attention. Now, since you don't pay attention, you are actually saving all that energy. The rule is whenever you pay attention to anything, your energy goes to there. You are energizing that particular thing by paying attention. Now, if you understand this rule, when we actually pay attention, we are energizing it. If that is the case, if we withhold attention or withdraw attention, what is happening? We save that energy in the system. Now, when we save the energy, so half an hour you did meditation, you have saved that energy. Now, when you come out of that meditation, your mind has a lot more energy at its disposal. So the mind becomes sharper and can concentrate well. This is exactly what happens in meditation. That's why Babuji says concentration is the result of meditation. But during meditation itself, you don't require concentration. I hope it is clear. Daji writes in Heartfulness Way, concentration is effortful focus. Meditation is effortless focus. That's the difference. So in concentration, there is effort involved. In meditation, there is no effort involved, although focus is there on both. Secondly, in concentration, we focus on a finite object. In meditation, we focus on an infinite object. That's the another difference. So concentration is effortful focus on a finite object. Meditation is effortless focus on an infinite object. Hope it is clear.
Brother, thank you.
Okay. Shall we continue to the next chapter now? Because we need to finish Sahajmarg philosophy and then we also need to finish efficacy of Raja Yoga by Saturday, this Saturday. So I'm just aware of that. So we still have another 58 pages of the spiritual Sahajmarg philosophy, and then we have another whole book, Efficacy of Raja Yoga, to complete by Saturday. So let's kind of go through the paces now. Man, his place and destiny in the cosmos. There are some questions that can come in this chapter also. Please there will be some repetitions, so not to worry. Where there are repetitions, we can actually go faster. I would advise that instead of pondering over how the universe came into existence, we should admire the being that brought it into existence. We have set up a tiny creation of our own individual material existence, having layers and layers of grossness and opacity. What is now to be done is to shatter off those layers of opacity one by one and assume the absolute as we had at the time of creation. Our existence in the present grossest form is neither sudden nor accidental, but it is the result of slow process of evolution. Again, this is taken from the Reality at Dawn chapter, one of the chapters there. The latent motion which led to the formation of the universe may be called as the first supermind of God. So the latent motion which is near to the center is now called as the first mind of God or the supermind of God. We owe our origin to that mind which we call as the first mind. At the back of the mind, there is the center or the state of the thumb. So again, the state of the thumb is nothing but the center. What is next to the center? We have the latent motion, which is also the first mind of God or supermind of God. So I hope, because many times we use this terminology without knowing what exactly it refers to. That's why I'm just emphasizing. The existence of the soul can be traced to as far back as the time of creation, when it existed in its naked form as a separate entity. Now that is what we call it as true self. From the primary state of existence of the soul in its most subtle form, we marched on to the grosser and grosser forms of existence. These may be expressed as coverings around the soul. The earliest coverings were of the finest nature, and with them we existed in our homeland, the realm of God. So, when the soul came into being, we all existed in the central region with the finer covering. Whatever the finer covering? The finer covering is the idea of separateness, anxiety, and original desire. The big desire, what Daji calls as the big desire in Heartfulness Way. So, we all existed in the realm of God. What is the realm of God? The central region. One without the covering will be swimming in the infinite ocean next to the center. One with the covering will be outside that ocean but within the central region. But still, we are within the realm of God. That is our original state, original place. Now, from there, we have now descended down. The addition of more and more coverings of ego continued, and subsequently, manas, chit, buddhi, and ahankar in cruder forms began to contribute to our grossness. In due course, samskaras began to be formed, which brought about the resultant effects. Virtue and vice made their appearance. Slowly, our existence assumed the densest form. The effect of the samskaras is the commencement of the feelings of comfort and miseries and joys and sorrows. Our likings for joys and comfort and dislikings for the sorrows and miseries have created further complications. Consequently, we find ourselves surrounded by pain and miseries, and we think that deliverance from them is our main goal. Now, man is a bipolar being. We also use the word bipolar disorder in psychiatry. Okay, the same terminology. And Babaji is using the same word, bipolar being. Now it has got its root nearest to the base at the other end towards the world. In other words, man has one aspect towards the base, other aspect towards the world. It somehow, the individual mind gets molded towards the cosmic mind, it begins to appear in its true color. Now suddenly, the cosmic mind is the term used. Now we have to wonder, where is the cosmic mind? The lowest aspect of the mind is the individual mind. Then you have the cosmic mind. Then you have the paracosmic mind. Then you have the divine mind. And then you have the first mind of God or the super mind of God. This is the sequence. So I'll just repeat. What we have got, the mind in the Pinda Pradesh is the first mind, the individual mind. Then in the Brahmanda Mandal, we have the cosmic mind. In the Parabrahmanda Mandal, we have the paracosmic mind. And then we have the divine mind. And then as we enter into the central region, we get aligned with the first mind of God or the super mind of God. This is the sequence as far as mind is concerned. Please remember this. Okay. Now, when we say the individual mind has to be turned in the direction of the cosmic mind, we are talking about the Brahmandi mind. As a matter of fact, the human mind is a reflection of the Kshobha, which set into motion the force of nature to bring creation into existence. So the force that we feel in our mind is nothing but the effect of the Kshobha that was there at the time of existence, creation, which brought creation into existence. It's the same root force that we feel in the mind. The individual mind is thus a part of the godly mind or the Kshobha. If we somehow turn it downwards, trends towards the base, it will become quite calm and peaceful. So far as my personal experience goes, I find that only with the help of a dynamic personality we can turn it towards the base. It is only the proper power and the will of such a personality that it makes a mark in this respect. So we cannot turn the direction of the mind upwards. It requires a dynamic personality to use their power and will to effect it. Reading and writing are of no avail. The man with faith, devotion, and self-confidence wins. So underline that. That might come as a one-line question. The man with dash, dash, and dash wins. Faith, devotion, and self-confidence. Man is nature's instrument. He possesses immense power and has the implement required for the utilization of that power. That wonderful implement is the mind, and it is exclusively the possession of man. Even God, who is thought to be the object of worship, does not have mind. Animals are, however, said to possess mind, but it is of a different nature. It is in an inner state in comparison to man's mind, which is full of life and activity. So it's not like animals don't have mind, plants do not have mind. No, they do have mind, but it's more like an inert mind, not fully functional, not full of life and activity. Now, even inanimate objects also have a mind, but again, it is dormant. It is not expressed at all. They also undergo change. You remember? So if you keep a stone exposed to the elements, the stone undergoes change. That's how we get sand. So there are things that happen in nature anyway, but they are not expressed fully as in life form. But there is life dormant in it also. Wherever there is change, there is some degree of life. Remember that. So in other words, if we want to go to the reality which is changeless, although we might have the life, we have to go to that state which is beyond life. That's why we say that we have to cross the layer of the cycle of life and death. Then only we can align with reality. In other words, our attachment to life also should be given up. That's why Babuji says, the reality stage can only be had when you enter into the central region where you experience the state of living dead condition. You are living, but in a dead condition inside. Now, the mind owes its origin to the first sphere, which came into effect by the will of God to bring creation into existence. Such being the nature of the human mind, it is highly incorrect on the part of the pseudo Mahatmas to rail at it in its bitterest terms, not taking into account its real value and merit. It is in fact the only instrument for bringing things into action. It is the original cosmic power in miniature form, which brought into existence the tiny creature of man. So, what does man use? He uses the same root power to bring his own creation. All that we are doing is we are utilizing the same root power to bring our own creation in this material world. If somehow we turn the direction of the power to go back to that root power, then our journey is ended. This is what exactly happens in our system. So we utilize the power which is coming down for our journey back. It is the same power which is in action at the root of everything. Whose power it is? Is it God or man? The answer is simple. It is definitely of man because God possesses no mind. If he had it, he would have been subject to the same effect of samskaras. It must therefore be the human mind that works at the root. Every particle of the human mind, 1 minute, we'll finish this paragraph and then take some questions. Every particle of the human mind possesses immense power, and the entire universe is closely connected to it. Every point of the spinal cord is full of the greatest power, but no heed has been paid to it. People are all crying for Kundalini Shakti, hankering madly after its awakening. Every particle in the composition of the kernel nucleus of the various brain cells has its own powerful force which surpasses that of Kundalini. But nobody has yet tried to utilize it for the good of humanity. My view may not be acceptable to most of the Gnanis, and even if I demonstrate it to them, they may not be sensitive enough to realize it. A time has, however, come, as it must, when people will understand and realize it. I'll stop here. Any questions? We can continue. So Babaji has emphasized the importance of human mind in our journey. So if we want to progress to the highest, then if we can utilize all aspects of the mind, then we will progress to the highest fastest. If you utilize only one or two aspects of the mind for our journey will be slow to that extent. So rather than derail the mind, we should utilize all the aspects of the mind that is given to us in our capability, in the march towards our journey to reality. So that's the bottom line. I have told you the different stages of the mind. Individual mind in the Pinda Pradesh, cosmic mind, paracosmic mind, divine mind, and the first mind of God or the super mind of God. These are the 5 stages of the mind. Just remember that. The mind is only one. However, in different regions, it is given different names. The force which is flowing through all the minds is still the same, which is the force from the root or the stir or the kshu. That is the force that is happening. So don't get confused that there are different forces in mind. No. As and when the mind flows through different regions, why does it actually flow from different regions? When it becomes more and more grosses, the mind stabilizes at different levels. Then the flow is felt through those layers, through those coverings. Then the mind is called in different names. That's all. So when we come to the Brahmanda Mandal, we align ourselves with the cosmic mind or the Brahmandi mind. So we get a taste of it. In other words, we are getting the same taste of the individual mind without the effects of some of the coverings. Then we have the Brahmandi mind. Again, if you remove more coverings, you will get a taste of the Brahmandi mind. You remove even more coverings, you will get a taste of the divine mind. That's what happens. Okay? So any questions?
Brother, when you say divine mind, it comprises all the portions of Prapanna, Prapanna Prabhu, and Prabhu.
Yeah, and even up to the 13th point.
Oh, everything is divine mind. Okay,
Yeah.
got it. Thank you, brother.
Once you cross the paracosmic region, once you cross the paracosmic region, we enter into the region of the divine mind.
Got it. Thank you.
There is no other name in between. As far as mind is concerned, we don't call Prapanna mind. So Prapanna is a stage of surrender. in that stage of surrender, the mind will still function. So the Prapanna mind has some features of the paracosmic mind also and the divine mind also. So it is not separately given a different name. It's just called as divine mind in its early stages. That's why. So hope this is clear. If it's clear, we can move on. Anything else?
The godly mind is the original stir.
Godly mind started in the original stir of the primary show.
So finally we
Mind,
have to come. So finally we
mind
have to merge
started.
in that. Oh, okay,
Mind started there.
got it. So
So we
finally,
have to. 1 minute. Let me finish. We have to cross the show to enter into the state of Tama. In other words, if we have to reach our goal, we have to cross two minds. Initially, you will cross the individual mind, which merges into its origin at the 13th point. Then we move through the central region where the godly mind also we cross. Then we cross the region of the show, enter into the stage of the Tama. Then our journey has ended with alignment to the center. So we cross both the minds, remember, not just the individual mind. We have to cross the primary mind or the super mind or the first mind of God also we have to cross in order to reach the goal. Okay? Yogita?
Brother, when you said, but as we know that until the Mahapralaya, we cannot merge in the center. So as we know that we have to swim in the infinite ocean. So that is the first star, brother. That is where.
Infinite state is just after that.
Oh, okay, brother.
Infinite ocean is, if you remember, the figure that is given in the reality at dawn, in the efficacy of Raja Yoga, the big circle, and there is a central dot and there is a sea. You remember that?
Yes, brother.
Infinite ocean is the portion between the center point and the sea. That area is the infinite ocean.
Okay, so we cross the first mind.
Exactly. You cross the sea, enter into that area. That is the infinite ocean. Then that is where you actually stabilize and continue and gain influence of the center. And you start merging into the center. When you say merging into the center, we always have this impression of physical merging. No, that's not what happens. We come into more and more influence of the center. That's all. We start acquiring the nature of the center. So if the nature of the center is complete ignorance, we also start stabilizing in the state of complete ignorance. That is what we call as merging. Merging is acquiring the quality of that particular thing into which we are merging. That is what we to call merging. Okay, we say that we merge into a particular condition in a particular point. What exactly happens? We absorb those conditions and we make it our own. That is merger. We are no longer separate from the condition. When both of them come to become one, that we no longer are separate from the condition, we say that we have acquired merger into the condition. So apply the same depiction now to the center. When we no longer are separate as far as our existence is concerned from the center and merge, what does merger means? Acquiring the state of that particular thing into which we want to merge. That is mergence. So if we want to merge into a particular point, we acquire the conditions and merge into it fully so that we and the condition are no longer different. Then you say mergence has occurred. Exactly the same definition occurs to the center. And where does that occur? It occurs in the infinite ocean as we swim towards the center. Where is the infinite ocean? After all the 7 rings of splendor has been crossed. So I'll just tell you the sequence. The 7 rings of splendor, then the Kshobh, then the latent motion, and then the center. These are all the things that you cross after you enter into the 13th point. Hope it is clear. So the
Yes,
7
brother.
rings of splendor, then the Kshobh, which is the first mind of God, then the latent motion, and then you enter into the center. aligned into the center. Hope it's clear.
Yes, brother. Thank you.
So basically, brother, you're saying the swimming happens in the latent motion.
No. When you start swimming, you are still aware of the latent motion also, because the kshob is after the latent motion. When the Mahapralaya occurs, the kshob and everything that is come out of kshob is gone. What remains then? The center and the latent motion, they both remain in a dormant form. That's all that occurs. Now, when the creation is still on, for example, if we were to go towards the center now, as far as we are concerned, the latent motion is still there. And the kshob happened. It's because of that we also came into existence. So we cross the 7 rings of Indra, then we come across the kshob. We cross the kshob also. When we cross the kshob, we have crossed the first mind of God or the super mind of God. Then there are still two things remaining: the latent motion and the center. So as we swim through the central region, the infinite ocean, we dissociate ourselves from the latent motion also. In other words, we get that ability to dissociate from the latent motion. We can feel that latent motion, but latent motion is not our goal. Our goal is the center, please remember. So even though we might become aware of the latent motion that is there, since we have kept our eyes on the center, we start imbibing the qualities of the center. So in that area, what you say, the center and the sea, the area there, you also have the latent motion, but latent motion is not our goal. Please remember that. So you can say, in other words, if you want to kind of just make it more simple, in the infinite ocean, there are latent motions. You can say that, just for the sake of simplicity, although the latent motion and the infinite ocean are two different things. It's like ocean, where the tide is low and the tide is high. When the tide is low, you can call that as latent motion. When the tide is very high, you can call that as motion with creation. So when you are swimming through the infinite ocean, you can become aware of the latent motion. But remember, our goal is not latent motion. Our goal is now towards the reality, which is beyond or next to the latent motion. And when we say mergence, we acquire the quality of that into which we want to merge. That's all it is. So for the sake of simplicity, if you want to keep that as together for the time being, you can keep that. That in the infinite ocean, there are latent motions. That you can keep. But they are two separate things. Only at that level, when we reach there, we can differentiate between these two.
Thank you, brother.
Okay. So shall we continue? Extinction
sure.
of parallelity between human and divine creation. It is commonly believed that God created the man in his own form. All the religions, philosophies, and the sciences of the world more or less agree on this point. It does not mean that the physical form of the God is the same as the man. The human body made up of flesh, bones, skin, possessing arms and legs and other limbs. It really means that man possesses or is composed of all the powers, forces, and energy which are present in nature in the same order. So please underline this: power, forces, and energy. Please underline. Babuji's differentiate between these three things: power, force, and energy, which are present in nature in the same order. So we are possessed of power also, force also, energy also. And normally we just read it as one thing, energy or power. But there are three different things. The composition of man is exactly as the same of the universe. Just as behind this solid external universe, there are innumerable other finer and finer types. So behind this grosser physical form of man, there are still numerous finer and finer forms of existence. The outermost form is the gross body or the Sthula Sharir, behind which there exists the astral body or the Sukshma Sharir, and then the causal body or the Karana Sharir. Besides these three outer forms, there are innumerable others which are so fine and subtle that thinkers do not call them bodies but only as fine coverings around the soul. It is really very difficult to assign a name for each one of them, which may be countless. With all these innumerable forms, from the finest to the grossest, man is in existence in the material world as a true copy of the universe or the entire manifestation of God. Represented by a complete circle from the outermost circumference to the innermost circle, center or zero, man's existence and the God's manifestation are really the same. That is why realization of the God, man's realization of the self and vice versa. So, since man is a creation of God, he has everything that God has created. If you say realization of God, you can also say it's a realization of the self of the man. The entire universe came into existence from the same point, the zero, through the process of evolution. Similarly, man's existence too develops from the same point. We belong to the country where religion spirits has ever been flowing in one or the other form. We are bred to have union with the reality we have emerged from. We have brought with us the very essence of the infinite. They say that God is within man. Thus, our ultimate purpose can only be served when we keep pace with divinity and link it with our line of humanity. As far as we are concerned, there are two lines which are going on, humanity and divinity. So, human being got the root force in the form of mind. They started playing around with the material things here, started creating their own creation. That's why human mind or human creation started getting separated out from the God's creation. As and when we stop the human creation or creation of the human mind with the material things that we have got, then we gradually start aligning to the divine mind. As stated earlier, humanity was akin to divinity at the source of creation and assumed a grosser form as a result of the jerks caused by actions and inactions in the process of evolution. We have only to bring all the conscience of the human frame of existence again to the original state of poise and tranquility to link it up with divinity. So, how to bring the humanity to divinity? We have to bring a state of poise and tranquility to all the forces in the human frame. This is achieved by introducing into them proper moderation, and we do that in Sahaj. The routine practice of meditation really aims at removing immoderation therefrom from by the action of our will so as to keep up the balance. Thus, the humanity in us begins to get transformed into divinity. So, in other words, immoderation is humanity, moderation is divinity. The more we acquire moderation in all the constituents of our system and the activities that we do, the more divine we become. That's all it is. Thus, it is in fact the exact sense conveyed by the term divinization of man. So, you remember the other things that we spoke about? Divinization of man, simplicity, purity. They are the two things that indicates divinization of man. And the third thing now Babaji is talking about is moderation in everything. This having been done, the parallelity disappears and both the divinity and humanity then almost becomes one. Humanity can, however, never become totally exist as long as one has a body with him. Thus, by the effect of meditation under the system of Sahaj Marg, we go on reducing the intensity of the force working along the lines of humanity. Divinity thus begins to gain ground and the parallelity begins to diminish. In other words, humanity begins to get charged with the force of divinity, which in time of force of time begins to prevail all over. When the condition gets fully settled, the parallelity is gone. 8 o'clock. 8:30. 9 o'clock. In other words, humanity begins to get charged with the force of divinity, which in the course of time begins to prevail all over. When the condition gets fully settled, the parallelity is gone and humanity, along with its force of creation, is reduced to insignificance. In this way, God being infinite, man at its highest level of approach is likewise within the sphere of humanity. When human limitations are gone, the expansion of self becomes unlimited, so much so that the entire universe seems to be contained within the self. This is what we call as universal self. From an individual self, we merge into the universal self. Anything then that strikes anywhere in the universe causes an echo in the heart of the man. Everything within nature is then within his knowledge and perception. So when man himself, the individual self, has converted into universal self, anything that occurs anywhere in the universe, we can become aware of that through our knowledge and perception. So I'll just pause here for 2 minutes. If there is any question, we can take that. After that, we hope to finish this particular chapter today.
Yeah, brother. This last sentence, anything then that strikes anywhere in the universe causes an echo in his heart. Everything within nature is then in his knowledge and perception. So, can we call this as intuition power?
Intuition has highest stage. In the lowest stage, intuition is called as Viveka. As we go higher, we become, you remember in the Brahmanda mind, we talked about everything happening in the astral sense there and then manifesting in this world, Brahmanda Pradesh. So that is also part of the intuition. Intuition, many times we take it to mean that getting to know something happening before it actually happens in the material form. That is called as intuition. So in the lowest level, intuition manifests in the level of inspiration. Then intuition manifests in the form of viveka or discriminative intelligence. Then intuition takes the form of knowing about things before it happens in the material realm. Then intuition takes the form of divine knowledge, where we catch the divine knowledge in its vibration level itself, even before it manifests in the final form at the Brahmanda Pradesh. All of these are intuition only. And when we become established at the highest level, anything that happens anywhere in the universe, we can become aware of. Now you might wonder, don't we think we'll become bombarded with so many things? Like so many things are happening in the universe at so many times, all the time. So don't we think we become bombarded with it? No. That which is necessary for us to be known through the help of the divine, only that we become known, will come to our knowledge. In other words, we become perfect instruments of nature, of God. So whatever is descending from God, which requires us to know certain things, that aspect is brought into our awareness. That's all that happens. So everything is intuition only till we reach that first mind of God and cross it and enter into the condition of the thumb. At the state of the thumb, we become aware of everything. So we have expanded across the entire creation of God.
Okay. So, based upon our intuition state, the ultimate filters it and then gives it to us.
Exactly. See, ultimate will not give everything to everyone. Right? For example, there are 3 children in the house. The parents know what to give which children according to their age and according to their requirement and likings. Right? Exactly the same thing. When there are many medians of God, suppose there are quite a few souls in the infinite ocean, and they all take part in the work of God and work with nature. So who does what work? How does one decide? It is the divinity, the center itself that divides. In other words, when things are descending, it will actually be given that this particular identity is going to take up this particular work. That's how it works. So whatever is necessary for that work to be accomplished for the sake of the center, we will become aware of those things because that is necessary for the work of the nature. But if we want to exercise our will and know certain other things, it does become possible. But we cannot intervene in it because we have no orders from the divine to intervene in it. Say, for example, I might want to know about the stock market. So knowing is different, but I don't want to probably enter into the market and do something because there is no order or there is no will on the part of our mind. So knowing about certain thing is different and having a will to intervene in that aspect is different. There, intervention only comes when the divine will stipulates it. Since we don't have our own will, our will gets aligned to the divine will. We don't have a separate will at that level. Our will is in alignment with the divine will. Whatever the divine will wills, that becomes our will. That's all, individually.
Yeah. Thank you.
Brother, one question. Like, can you explain how discrimination is intuition? How Viveka can be an intuition?
See, Viveka gives you an inner feeling. Intuition is an inner feeling, essentially. Inspiration is an inner feeling. Intuition in the grossest form is inspiration. Then as it becomes finer, you become discriminative intelligence. What is discriminative intelligence? It is not knowledge. It is a kind of feeling which helps you discriminate whether you want to go with a particular activity or not. The mind might say yes, the heart might say no. When the heart says no, you don't go along with that particular activity. Now, how does the heart decide? Heart will only say yes to those activities that is in tune with our spiritual journey. Now, this ability of the heart to tell you that this is in tune with the spiritual journey and is going to be helpful for you, and say that these activities are not helpful for you, this is intuitive intelligence or discriminative intelligence. We discriminate on the basis of whether that particular activity is going to be helpful for our journey towards the realization or not. So then the discriminative intelligence is more of a nature of a feeling rather than intelligence in the way that we think and reason. It's nothing to do with reason. It is something to do with feeling. That is discriminative intelligence. Okay? Intuition is a feeling per se. So it takes different form at different levels. And intuition is something, again, we get to know something is going to happen even before it happens. How do we know? We have a feeling about it. That is part of intuition. So if you look at intuition as a feeling, it becomes easier to relate to all the things that I said.
Okay.
Okay.
Brother,
Continue.
is this intuition will play a dual role?
Dual role. And dual role.
Like different opinion, like that, something like that. Duality.
1 minute. Intuition, depending on how much finer it has manifested in a person, intuition can actually be felt differently in two different people. So somebody who is not evolved might feel the intuition more like an inspiration. Somebody who might be evolved to a certain extent might feel the intuition more like a discriminative intelligence or viveka. Somebody else might actually catch the intuition at the level of the divine knowledge, at the level of vibration. So depending on our growth, we might perceive intuition differently. So not everyone will feel the same level of intuition. Not necessary. It depends on our state of evolution.
Then what will be the role of mind and heart with respect to intuition?
You need to work out. Please ponder on that question.
Thank you, brother.
We have been talking about heart and mind only till now. What else are we talking about? So you just work out when we talk about these aspects of intuition, what exactly happens to, for example, in inspiration, what happens to mind, what happens to heart. In Viveka, what happens to mind, what happens to heart. In the Brahmanda Mandal, what happens to heart, what happens to mind. Then you go to the divine knowledge, what happens to heart, what happens to mind. And then you go into the central region, what happens to heart, what happens to mind. So these are all, when you ponder on these questions, that's how you actually expand your ability or sensitivity to get to know things and experience things in due course. So whatever question you asked, what happens to heart and mind? There's a heart and mind field, but it does not stay static. It is dynamic. As we are evolving, the heart and mind field also evolves. So you need to work out what happens to the heart, what happens to the mind, and what happens to the heart-mind field. As we progress spiritually, it keeps changing because it is dynamic in nature. Okay? But it is unnecessary to go into the discussion on the changes that occurs at each level because it may not be relevant for your exams. Although we can discuss about it, but I don't think we have the time to discuss about it. But you can have this as a question for your reflection because it will be a good reflection for you to do. Okay?
Okay, thank you, brother.
So shall we continue? Realization and its means. From time immemorial, God realization has been trumpeted to be the goal of human endeavor, Purushartha and existence, especially in India. But just like the concept of God, ultimate reality, the idea of God realization too has become shrouded in such sheets of mystery that a sincere man of reason and science begins to feel disgusted at the very mention of the term. Most of the scholarly saints have defined their state of realization in numerous odd ways. But to me, it appears that as far as it can be defined, it is not realization. It is really a dumb state which is beyond expression. So, what is realization state? You can underline this. That can be asked in your question in the exams. It's really a dumb state which is beyond expression. Feeling or observing luminosity within or outside is not realization at all. During the early period of my Abhyas, I also felt and witnessed luminosity. But that not being the goal, I proceeded on under the watchful support of my master. Really, so again, he is now defining reality. Realization is a tasteless state, unchanging and constant. There is no charm, no attraction, and no ananda in the popular sense of the word. It can more appropriately be described as sange benamak, a lump of salt from which the saltishness has been taken away. One having attained the state of realization develops an unfailing will in the spiritual field. Generally, learned men express their opinion about realization or its condition on the basis of learning or not on the that of experiential knowledge, which is the real one. For that reason, I regret to say that realization has now become a present day art. The reality, in fact, has sunk down deep, living out its colors according to their mental taste and skill. The result is that people begin to focus their attention on these very paintings and get into them to the extent that there is neither spirituality nor reality. I believe that one must not have the right to touch the subject of realization until he has attained it in the true sense, whereby the divine wisdom has awakened in him. Only the life of practicality is required for the solution of the problem. So, once we become a realized person, then only the divine wisdom awakens in us. So, human wisdom is different, divine wisdom is different. So, please underline it. There are two levels of wisdom: human wisdom, divine wisdom. When do we get divine wisdom? When we align to the center, or when we have realized ourselves, then we get divine wisdom. Realization can better be defined as a state of changelessness, which is a condition seldom bestowed upon man even in the course of thousands of years. But if one happens to get a master who has attained it in full, the Abhyasi too is keenly interested in and earnest about it, it is quite easily attainable. But as long as there exists a feeling of the existence, it is not complete realization. It follows, therefore, that even bliss is a drawback. So, the previous page where Babuji says it is beyond charm, beyond attraction, and beyond arnam. Often people ask me to let them know first what realization is, and afterwards they would start worshipping. Which is just as may one say, let me first understand the thoughts of Shakespeare or Milton, and afterwards I shall try to learn alphabet. It is the same as in Abhyasi is saying, let me first realize God, then I'll start worshipping Him. When the very thing that you seek comes to you, why should you worship them at all? He alone who can climb up to the height, who has created in himself the recognition of his low-lying state. So, Babuji says, he alone can climb up to the height who has created in himself the recognition of his low-lying state. Spiritual discontent is rightly recognized as the starting point of philosophical endeavor in the tradition of Indian philosophy. Spiritual discontent. Underline that particular line. What is the start for spiritual endeavor? Philosophical endeavor? Spiritual discontent. Realization has now today become very easy because of the presence of the divine personality. The thought of people generally does not go beyond the point of liberation, which they take to be the final state of human approach. But that is wrong either. As a matter of fact, liberation is one of the lowest attainments on the divine path, and hence it is just like a toy for the child to play with. Beyond that, there is yet to be achieved. The infinite ocean lies still ahead, which is but a limitless expanse. Have your eyes fixed upon that and that alone, and go on and on to trace it out. Nirvikalpa Samadhi is also an yogic attainment, but it will not solve the problem. The real state of Samadhi is that in which we remain attached with the reality, pure and simple, every moment, no matter how busy one may be at the time with worldly work or duties. It is known as Sahaj Samadhi. Please underline this. Sahaj Samadhi comes after Nirvikalpa Samadhi. First is Savikalpa Samadhi, then is Nirvikalpa Samadhi. In the last, we get Sahaj Samadhi. And Babaji has just now defined what is Sahaj Samadhi. The real state of samadhi is that, the Sahaj Samadhi is that in which we remain attached with the reality, pure and simple, every moment, no matter how busy we may be all the time with the worldly work and duties. Sahaj Samadhi, one of the highest achievement and the very basis of nirvana. Its merits cannot be described in words but can only be realized by one who abides in it. It is not easy, as its name denotes. It is highly spoken by Saint Kabir, and it's a thing worth gaining. And it's also something that Ramana Maharshi used to speak about a lot, Sahaj Samadhi. And Daji has also kind of written about it in Designing Destiny. So we can also look at it. There are numerous means and practices prescribed for realization, one of which we have to choose that which guarantees speedy success. Now, what it may be, let everyone judge for himself. For a hint, I accept the judicious opinion of Swami Vivekananda on this point, that it is Raja Yoga alone that can successfully lead a man up to the highest point or level of approach, and that none but one having the capability and the capacity to apply his internal willpower through pranahuti is fit for being a guide or master. I am also assured that Hatha Yoga has no access beyond the Agna Chakra. Please underline this point. This may be a question. Hatha Yoga has no access beyond the Agna Chakra. Besides, there is also another serious defect in it. When we start with the bodily exercises of Hatha Yoga, the consciousness of our physical efforts with the idea of the self is in the background, remains all through. Thus, the ego, instead of getting reduced, goes on increasing thereby. But that is not the case with Raja Yoga, wherein one proceeds with the subtlest means for silencing the ever activity of the active tendencies of the mind. Besides, while practicing this, one is always away from the idea of the body, since he has his idea fixed on the subtlest. In order to realize the subtle being, we must take up the means which are equally fine and subtle. The difficulty arises when intricate methods are applied for the solution of a simple problem. In other words, they apply huge cranes for picking up a small sieving needle. God is simple and can be achieved by simple means. So, in order to realize Him, we must adopt such means through which we may be able to free ourselves from things created by our own will, actions, and surroundings. All our surround thoughts should be regulated, and our individual mind should be cleared of the burdens lying with it. We should be as light as cotton so that we may start our flight towards Him with the help of a single push from a capable master. In our sanstha, reality is infused at the first stroke of will, strike of will, which serves as the seed in the long run. So that is what we say. We sow the seed of divinity in the first sitting itself. The process is generally set in by one's master so that the seed may grow easily and soothing, scorching winds may not burn it up. The disciple waters it by constant remembrance, which is the only thing needed on the path of realization. Grahastha ashram, family life, is not a bar in gaining the real aim of life. I think this is the best ashram in which the higher approach is easily possible. I am a Grahastha and my master was also one. I assure you that a perfect saint may be found in this ashram alone. We perform our duties and remember Him as the ultimate reality. Okay. So, any questions before we end this particular chapter? Some of it are actually repetition from other chapters. So, Sahajmarg philosophy, I'm probably kind of going a bit faster because of the fact that many of them are repetitions. So, we will be able to easily kind of grasp it. Many of them are repetitions from other books at different levels. And you can actually easily trace it out, which book this portion has been taken, which book this portion has been taken.
Brother, one question, derivative, sorry, just one line question. In the sequence of 23 circles, Karana Sharir gets formed where's, brother?
It's a question not necessarily intuited for examination.
Got it, brother. I know I'm pissed you off with this question, but dying it is.
1 minute. Let me complete the answer.
Thank you.
So, there are two Karana Sharirs. You remember, we have as an individual 3 bodies. The Brahman also has 3 bodies. So, this is a clue to your answer. We have 3 bodies, individual level. Brahman at the universal level also has 3 bodies. So when we talk about Karana Sharir, the origin of the Karana Sharir as far as the 23 circles is different. The origin of the Brahman's Karana Sharir is different. And I think I'll just leave it open with this so that this is also another question for you to ponder about. Where is the Brahman's Karana Sharir and where is the individual's Karana Sharir? But I'll just give a clue. Individual Karana Sharir is below the 10th point. Brahman's Karana Sharir is beyond the 13th point. So this is a clue. And then maybe at some point of time when we have more time, I'll explain the difference between these two Sharirs, how it is formed and how it is different. So there are two different things. So Karana Sharir at an individual level versus Karana Sharir at a Brahman's level. So if you look at it from this perspective, no, we actually have to cross 6 bodies, 3 individual bodies, 3 Brahman's bodies. Then we establish ourselves in the center. That is when you get the infinite ocean, and then the latent motion, and then the center. So I think I've given enough clues to this question. I'm
Got
also
it, brother.
probably
Thank
giving
you.
you the answer.
Yeah,
So it's
got
good
it.
for you to ponder on it and work out which circle or which point the Karana Sharir for the individual works and which points the Karana Sharir of the Brahman works.
Hmm.
Okay.
Got it, brother. Thank you.
Because
Grateful.
if you
Thank
go into the depth of that, no, we'll go on in a slightly different direction, tangent. And that might actually, for some people, it might actually raise more questions than actually clarify. So I've just given you a very subtle hint, that's all.
No, this is sufficient. From here, I can take off. Thank you.
Okay.
Grateful. Grateful. Thank you.
Way to realization. So we shall read the 2-3 pages because we still have another 5 minutes. We shall read 2 pages and then end it. Non-attachment. It is true that we are never free. We can never be free from Maya unless we cultivate non-attachment. But it does not mean severing our connection with home, family, and all our worldly concerns and taking up the life of a religious mendicant. I do not agree with those who hold the view that the only means of cultivating non attachment is to get away from the home and family and retire to the solitary corner, discarding all family ties. Renunciation effected by such forced means is seldom found to be genuine, for it is just possible that, in spite of their apparent forced detachment from the world, they may still inwardly be clinging to it. That's exactly what happens to many of the people who become a religious mendicant. They are away from the family, but they are thinking about the family all the time. That's what happens. No doubt, as a householder, we have to look after many things. We have to support our family, we have to provide for the education of our children, we have to look to their wants and necessity, we have to protect them from heat and cold, and so on. For these necessities, we earn and possess money and property. The real evil is only our undue attachment to the things which we are associated with. So, what is the real evil? It is not the possession of the things, our undue attachment to it. This is the main cause of our sufferings. But if we are able to do everything in life, thinking it to be our duty without the feeling of attraction or repulsion, we are in a way free from worldly ties and have renounced the world in the true sense. Although we possess and make use of many things, everything we possess shall then be seen to be a sacred trust from the Supreme Master for the discharge of our duties entrusted to us. So when we think everything as duty, whatever things we use are looked at from the point of view of trusteeship. When we look at the things, our activities are duties, everything that we use for that activity is looked at from the point of view of trusteeship. So the next line, again, this is a repetition from some of the early chapter in Reality at Dawn. Renunciation truly means non-attachment with worldly objects and not non-possession of things. This is again another question for you about renunciation. Thus, a householder's life in which possession of things and worldly ties are indispensable is no impediment in the way of renunciation and consequently of realization, only if one is not duly attached to the objects he is connected with. There are numerous examples of saints having attained the highest degree of perfection, leading a householder's life all through. In fact, majority of the saints or the sages that we read about in the Upanishads are all householders. Renunciation is in fact a condition or an inner state of mind which brings into view the transitory and the changing character of things and creates a feeling of non-attachment to such objects. So this is another definition that you might use. Renunciation is in fact a condition or inner state of mind which brings to view the transitory and changing character of the things and creates a feeling of non-attachment to such objects. His eyes are fixed upon every moment on reality which is unchanging and eternal, and he is free from the effect of attraction and repulsion. This is Vairagya. Renunciation in the true sense of the word. When we have reached this state of mind, we are free from desires. We feel contented with what is available to us. So I told you there are two states of Vairagya at the second point and the Para-Vairagya that we feel at the eighth point. So when we become desireless or when the desires actually becomes less in number in the first point, you remember the first point is full of desires. So when we work on the first point, what exactly happens? The desires comes down and to a certain extent, contentment starts manifesting. However, the contentment is still not strong enough. So without that strength in that conviction in that contentment, we actually move to the second point where we develop Vairagya. Now the development of Vairagya gives a strength to the condition of the contentment in the first point. That's how we strengthen our contentment. Okay, so the condition that emerges in the next point not only works or helps us in proceeding to the third point or the subsequent point, but also strengthens the conditions in the lower point. So remember this. So the condition that we can get in the next point gives us energy to move to the subsequent point, but also strengthens the connection that we got at the earlier point. That's how it works. Okay. So I'll just read this last paragraph and then we'll end for the day. The end of desires means stopping of the formation of the samskaras. So this is another thing. How does the stoppage of the formation of the samskaras occur? Means end of the desires. What remains now is only to undergo the effect or the bhog of the previously formed samskaras, which are to be worn out during the course of our life. Nature too helps us in the process of creating a field of bhog in order to remove the impressions of our thoughts and actions from the causal body. Again, the samskaras during the bhog are removed from the causal body. Just underline that. That's many people write it as subtle body. So during the process of bhog, samskaras are removed from the causal body. When these coverings melt away, we begin to assume final forms of existence. The man who is born in this world is sure to taste miseries. One cannot escape this. When I see the world, I find it very troublesome. Some are groaning in with pain, a few are suffering from the loss of their dear ones, and great ones are anxious to achieve success at every step. We try to get rid of these by going into penance, and rishis have devoted themselves thoroughly to it. All that is born of attachment is misery. Pleasure and both contribute to misery. There is no remedy for overcoming these miseries except devoting ourselves towards godly thoughts of the purest nature. So that is the surest way of getting out of miseries, which is devoting ourselves towards godly thoughts of the purest state or nature. We need not renounce the world and go for penance in the forest. Let the material world and the spiritual world go side by side, glittering equally. One cannot be loser in any way if in doing his household duties, he brings himself up to the realization of God as well. We should soar with both wings if we want to succeed. It is a vague idea of the people in general that God is to be searched for in the forest. My idea is that he should be searched for in the heart. One is performing the household duties and at the same time is equally busy with godly devotion. You may say then these two things are incompatible and are contrary to each other, but it is not the case. In the long run, godly wisdom begins to work and one does his duty from the mind beyond. Thus, Vairagya can be attained only when one is wholly diverted towards the divine. When it is so, one naturally becomes disinterested in his own self, including everything connected with it. Thus, he loses not only the body consciousness, but subsequently the soul consciousness as well. What remains then is nothing but the being in a dead form or living dead. So, in order to reach the living dead condition, we cross three levels of consciousness: the body consciousness, the mind consciousness, and the soul consciousness. What are we at that time? After we have crossed the soul consciousness, we are in the state of living dead, in the condition of the true self. That is what happens. And that is called as self-realization. For self-realization, the true self-realization, which is our original existence in its naked form, we have to cross three levels: the body consciousness, the mind consciousness, and the soul consciousness. Okay. So I'll stop there. We can continue tomorrow evening from this 405 meditation chapter. Is that okay? So I'll stop here. Any questions I'll take. We'll just cross 2 minutes after 9. So it should be okay.